Hello everyone, welcome back to Streed's Guide to Fraggle Rock. Today I'm reviewing Season 2, Episode 2, Boober Rock. This episode starts out with Doc returning home with the laundry, getting disgruntled with Sprocket for leaving marks on his blueprints. Sprocket gets equally disgruntled when he finds Doc's screwdriver in his bed. The two argue, and this leads to Doc to resort to a desperate measure.
That does it. A man's got to draw the line somewhere. And from now on, this is going to be the line between you and me.
Meanwhile, in the Great Hall near Boober's cave, Fred is loudly giving whoopee lessons, while the Doozers are noisily building their constructions. Loki arrives, asking Boober to critique her poem, and Boober's having a really trying day.
Just one more. When Fraggle Rock's just noisiness.
Fraggle Rock is just noisiness.
Boober arrives at Gobo and Wimbly's cave, asking if they borrowed his Mossy, but unfortunately it's nowhere to be found. He notices them reading Uncle Matt's maps, discovering a new cave that suits Boober's palate.
Yeah, there's whole areas here that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, like this one, the Caves of Boredom.
I remember Matt and the storyteller mentioning that place, but I can't remember what they said. Something about its being dull and quiet.
Quiet, huh? Sounds beautiful. And it's not far away.
Suddenly, Red arrives, being obnoxious, bullying poor Boober, accidentally smearing rock moss on his best scarf. She apologizes and attempts to clean it up, but unintentionally breaks Boober's bleach nut, causing Boober to be not angry, not dismayed, but furious.
Well, at least this stuff clears your brain.
Well, it certainly clears my brain of any silly notions I had about getting some peace and quiet around here.
Afterwards, Loki reads part of her lovely poem to Boober, sparking the idea for him to move to the Caves of Boredom, where he can live out his life in blissful tranquility. Boober packs his things, catching the eye of Wimbly, who follows him, and the two share a comedic scene together.
I'll go along with you if you like.
Wembley, you are a Fraggle who likes to be the siren for the volunteer fire department and run around yelling squeak, squeak, squat, squat. I am a Fraggle who likes the serenity of dimly lit caverns and the gentle drip, drip, drop, drop of stalactites. We live in two different caves, Wembley. I don't think it would work out.
Boober finally arrives at the Caves of Boredom, and he's in awe of its idyllic and still nature, causing him to burst into a song that every introvert can relate to.
So don't be alone, don't ever feel lonely, you're always at home with you, got nothing to lose, you'll get good times only, you won't get the blues with you.
Back in the workshop, Sprocket is attempting to cross the boundary line to get his treats, while Doc reinforces the rules of the boundary line. He's in the midst of inventing an electronic sponge, but needs his second blueprint. Sprocket forbids him, resulting in a standoff between the two. We return to the Caves of Boredom, and Boober shows off his excellent carpentry skills by constructing a cave-made fence eagle. Alarmingly, Boober begins to forget his friends' names. Meanwhile, Gobo and Moki head to the Caves of Boredom to check on Boober. Moki recommends her poem to Gobo, and Gobo does what he always does. He runs for a race. Just kidding, he reads postcards from his Uncle Traveling Matt. In the postcard, Matt details a visit to a subway station, remarking on its dull atmosphere. Suddenly, he sees a subway and confuses it for a screaming traveling cave, passing out from the shock of it, vowing to avoid boring caves at all costs. Loki and Gobo arrive at the Caves of Boredom and meet with Boober, discovering a concerning revelation.
Don't you just miss us already?
Well, to tell you the truth, I kind of forgot about you.
Forgot?
Boober, do you feel okay?
Gobo and Moki say an awkward goodbye and head back to the rock, telling the others of this disquieting encounter. Gobo suggests that they see the storyteller, so Wimbly decides to visit Boober. Back in the Caves of Boredom, Boober decorates his new home and Wimbly arrives. We also get a clever and ironic bit of info about Wimbly, whose name apparently means a Fraggle who can easily make up his mind. Wait a minute, I thought Wimbly meant no scratching nose in public. Anyways, Wimbly begins to forget too while these bizarre plants start trying to grab him. The Fraggles visit the storyteller, who was originally voiced by Richard Hunt, who's now being replaced by Terry Angus, who voices various other characters such as Morris Fraggle and Brio the Minstrel. I must note, Angus does an incredible job voicing the storyteller. He sounds nearly indistinguishable to Hunt's performance. By the way, this is the first episode that hints at the storyteller's crush on Traveling Matt. I always ponder why they didn't get together. Maybe this was a Sam and Diane situation. Anyways, the storyteller begins recounting the eerie tale of the Caves of Boredom, once known as the Caves of Forgetfulness.
The story goes that two Fraggles, Telly and Melly, went there and disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes! It seems that the caves are filled with these bizarre killer plants.
We gotta go get Boober!
And then come on! Oh, nobody wants to hear the whole story anymore. Oh, boulders!
We return to the Caves of Boredom, and the duo are beginning to panic, so Wembley suggests that they sing the Remembering song to boost their spirits. And admittedly, this is my least favorite Fraggle Rock song. It starts off well, but then slowly descends into a bunch of mumbling. Perhaps that was the point, but it still didn't sound the best and felt like padding for the episode. Anyways, Gobo, Moki, and Red write notes on their backs, listing the things they shouldn't forget. Meanwhile, in the Caves of Boredom, Wembley is slowly losing mobility. The Fraggles find the odious flowers, and through their alluring scent, they begin to forget, while Boober is on the brink of dementia himself, wandering around until he finds and reads Moki's poem, which inspires him to cook a meal.
There, put some of that in one of these. And a floppy thing. Another one. And a dash of this. Why did I think that smell? I better get back to making this supper. What am I saying? Dirty scarves, rock soap, twigs, bleach nuts for supper? Wembley, guess what I was just about? Wembley? I remember! Signed Boober? Hey! Wembley, guess what? Oh no!
Boober's finally able to save Wembley along with his friends, and the Fraggles flee the perilous cave. We return to the workshop, and Doc decides to set an agreement with Sprocket, until they both realize how silly the boundary line really is, and promptly disavow it.
Sprocket, the man who invented the clothesline. He was a genius. Elegance, simplicity, yes, sir.
This was an impeccably entertaining Boober-centric episode with a great lesson but undeniably confused in its execution. This is somewhat of a spiritual sequel to Season 1's I Don't Care. Only then, Boober did overreact in a profound way. But in this episode, that's not really the case. Boober was completely justified in his decision to move out of the Great Hall. The Doozers were noisy, Red was annoying, and honestly quite obnoxious here, and it's not like he was abandoning his friends indefinitely. He was just moving to a new place that just so happened to be really hazardous. In principle, Boober didn't overreact at all. I mean, Wembley and Gobo presumably live a ways away from the Great Hall. The overall message of this episode is to appreciate your friends and to avoid coming to extreme conclusions over petty squabbles. But like I said, Boober was completely justified in wanting to move away, so the execution of this episode is quite clunky and somewhat poorly written. I also felt that the Remembering song was only placed in the episode for padding's sake. It wasn't too dull or unbearable, but it did feel quite unneeded. Despite all the apparent flaws, I really enjoyed this episode. I'm Never Alone is, in my opinion, Boober's greatest song. It just embodies his personality so seamlessly. I love the setting as well. The Caves of Boredom conveyed an atmosphere of both eeriness and tranquility. Overall, I'm going to rate this episode a Doozer Stick. It was fun, entertaining, comical, and creative. If it hadn't been for the muddle execution and clunky writing, I definitely would have rated this episode higher. Well guys, that was the review, and I'll see you all next time.